And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lowdown Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin. Whew. Fresh off of the debut episode of the Basketball Passport podcast with Lee Ellis. He and I got together. We talked about Cat. We talked about Vince Carter's jersey being retired. We talked about Zach Lowe being laid off by ESPN. And then we previewed the stuff that we'll be talking about there moving forward. That is here on the Lounge YouTube feed, and it will be on the Lounge RSS feed for podcasts for, I'd say, the next week or two. And then we will break off from there and allow it to grow on its own feeds to continue going in that direction. The Lounge will continue it to exist as it does. It will be live Sunday night through Thursday night with the occasional, maybe it'll be a Friday happy hour. Maybe it will be an emergency podcast. Lounge isn't going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. If anything, the Lounge is growing as you guys with your support continue to allow it to grow. On that note, please do hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcast. If you guys are watching live on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to tune in there. And then if you guys have questions or comments, leave them in the form of a 5-star review on iTunes, and I will get to them every week. I'm going to check in on that right now to see what we have to get to from there. And then tell friends about this, weird Lakers show where this guy is like weirdly informed on stuff. Mostly pretty annoying. Does a lot of whining, generally speaking, but is fun, brings on fun guests. For some reason, this community keeps growing, and you should get in on this thing while it's still, I don't know if it's still an indie band at this point. It's probably more of like I don't even know what stage of bandom this would be, but yeah, tell your friends that you love the show, tell your enemies that you hate it, and we'll keep this thing growing. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and dive on into the show. Today, we're going to be talking about Karl-Anthony Towns being traded and the impact that that's going to have on the Lakers. We'll talk a little bit about, how camp appears to be going and all of that stuff. Didn't really get too much new Lakers stuff over the weekend. So that allows me to spend a little bit more time on your guys' questions. Again, if you have questions, send them in the form of a 5-star review to iTunes, where I get to those every single week. It looks like, yeah, we have a few. So for this week on the iTunes mailbag. So send those there, leave your super comments, all of that good stuff. And let's go ahead and also some extra news too. Jen agreed to be you guys really enjoyed Jen's injury analysis. Told her that you guys enjoyed it, so she said that she wants to do more of it. So she'll be my official injury analyst this year to offer that. Hopefully she doesn't have to talk too often, because hopefully we don't have too many Lakers injuries to deal with. But that'll be the plan there moving forward. But let's dive into the show. All right. So first and foremost, Malcolm, I am pulling double duty. It's been a night. It's going to be one of those seasons. And it's funny, last year, fresh off of being laid off and fresh off of, I'll just say, some unfortunate circumstances with the pod and where it went initially after Vox, that I was kind of like looking for things to do. I'm at the point now where I have to like turn things down, which is on one hand really exciting, means that we're back on our feet, but it also means it's also kind of a weird feeling because like I feel I'm just addicted to working. I feel like there's nothing I should say no to because you just never know how long people are going to be interested in your stuff. Yeah, BC, I was laid off by Vox a year and a half ago. So I don't know if like a new listener might be the case, but whatever. but yeah, I am pulling double duty tonight. There will be a few nights per week where I'll be pulling double duty. Probably not too often here on the lounge feed specifically, right? We're going to be building out the basketball passport feed as well, and growing that thing. Tonight's a little unique in that I want to drop this. I wanted to drop basketball passport into the Lakers lounge feed, just to give it a little kick in the butt on its way out the door, or on its way out onto the beautiful sea that is NBA content. But no, let's talk about Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, according to various reports, the trade is not actually finalized yet. Neither in the term of like it's official. It's They're still working on some of the minutia, matching salaries, making sure guys get bonuses, all of that stuff. Um, and getting under and staying under hard caps. It's just the one thing that Rob Pelinka loves to remind us is how complicated making trades in the NBA is. That still remains to be the case, as frustrating as it is when we hear about it. But Karl-Anthony Towns appears to be going to New York, and going to Minnesota will be Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. There are going to be some extra pieces. Apparently, Charlotte could potentially get involved here. And obviously, that would change the outlook of the trade and the outlook of the returns on some of these things. I don't think it would change kind of who wins or loses the trade, as this will basically, as whatever pieces are added to the deal will be done, will be added so that the deal can actually be finalized, not so much to like improve the status of the deal for either of the sides here. So as of right now, I'm going to go ahead and operate as if Karl-Anthony Towns is a New York Knick and Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo are Minnesota Timberwolves. And excuse me, of course, right as the season starts and right as we launch this new podcast, Avery comes home with the sniffles, and it takes about 48 hours or so for those sniffles to transfer their way to me. So that's what we're going to deal with here forever, it feels like, because I have children. But yeah, Karl-Anthony Towns going to New York, I think, is a win. I wouldn't call it a big win for the New York Knicks. I think that he will help, and he's an injection of talent at a position that the Knicks are actually very thin at right now. They lost Hartenstein to OKC, and Mitchell Robinson is still injured and tends to be very injured very often. So you get Karl-Anthony Towns, and he shows up. He'll be able to space the floor. Obviously, be able to offensively makes a whole bunch of sense. Clears a bunch of space out for Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart and that whole group of Villanova players. Donte DiVincenzo kind of breaks up the Villanova crew as he now goes obviously to Minnesota, which is kind of weird. I'm not sure how well Cat, just kind of at like face value, fits in Tom Thibodeau's system. We've seen it previously, and it didn't go that well. Now, that isn't to say that neither of those two parties can grow. I think Cat has grown a ton since he was coached by Tom Thibodeau last. So maybe that's how this plays out. I will say that, for New York, if I were a New York fan, I would convince myself that as a giant FU to Minnesota for salary dumping him, Karl-Anthony Towns can go on a tear, and basically, go nuts. And remind the Wolves at every turn how stupid it was to basically salary dump him with his middle fingers blazing. So maybe that's how this plays out. I think there's a decent chance at it, actually. Now, from the Lakers' perspective or the Western Conference perspective, Minnesota just got worse. I don't like the fit between Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle. Randle doesn't space the floor as well as Karl-Anthony Towns did, which means that Anthony Edwards is going to be dribbling into, a lot more crowded keys and paint areas and stuff, which forces him to be more of a jump shooter, or it's going to take a little bit of time to rework the offense to make it work. I think eventually they can figure it out to where they're still okay. I don't think Minnesota like falls off of the face of the earth or anything like that. But like the timing of it, and I think most critically here to that team, they're coming off of maybe the most exciting season in Wolves history. And that team, yeah, they got beaten fairly handily by the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas is really good. They'll be really good again this year. But they made significant strides forward. They beat the Denver Nuggets in legitimate fashion. Everybody was, relatively healthy. And they, looked to be heading into the season with a ton of momentum, only for ownership to step in and say, nope, actually, we got to start cutting some costs here. And, they're saying, I know that the take in Minnesota right now from the optimists are like, well, this allows you to re-sign Nickeil Alexander Walker and Naz Reid, which is fine. I guess it does. But like Karl-Anthony Towns being in your organization didn't make it so that you literally couldn't re-sign those players. It just meant that it would be really expensive if you did. So now, if and when you sign those players by way of this new financial flexibility, that means that the main asset that you got back for Karl-Anthony Towns in Julius Randle, you're letting him expire basically. And after you extend Nickeil Alexander Walker and Naz Reid, now all of a sudden you have the same core minus Karl-Anthony Towns without any NBA player to show for it, right? Maybe it's like Donte DiVincenzo, but I don't see like him being such a key proponent of a winning team that it allows you to forget about the fact that they just traded Karl-Anthony Towns for, again, if you let Julius Randle expire, basically nothing. And it's an impossible spot. I'd be pissed if I were a Wolves fan. Me being a Laker fan, I'm pretty excited because this is the kind of thing that, again, like I think from a talent standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, and all of that stuff, it's very, very likely that they remain pretty good to actually good. Now, making this trade basically a few days before training camps start and making this trade in a way that it's very easy to tie the reasoning back to finances basically shows these players and the fan base that they may never win a championship with Glenn Taylor. They probably won't win a championship with Glenn Taylor as the owner. And remember, there's no reason for Lakers fans to remember this, but Glenn Taylor was going to sell the team to Alex Rodriguez and to another another co-owner. Well, he would have been the primary one. A-Rod would have been the minority owner. And when you bring in a new owner, that's the most exciting day, I think, to a sports fan who actually pays attention to these things. Bringing in a new owner, and injecting that organization with just that little bit more excitement basically allows you to there we go. It allows you to basically hit the reset button. All of those past transgressions with ownership, whether it was bad coaching hires, bad executive hires, dumb financial decisions, all of that stuff, that kind of falls by the wayside. You hit the reset button. The new owners can step in and instill a completely new culture organizationally that, like, if it were to happen with the Lakers, I'd be really excited about new ownership and more money being spent potentially on the Lakers. And then Glenn Taylor looked at Anthony Edwards and saw him lighting the league on fire and was like, actually, no, I'm not going to sell. Nah, I'm good. And I remember when it happened. I'm a Vikings fan. You guys know this. A lot of my Vikings fan friends who are also Wolves fans were like down in the dumps. And I think correctly, because they're like, fuck, we thought we were rid of Glenn Taylor and nonsense that comes with rooting for a team that is owned by Glenn Taylor. And then mere months after that whole ordeal, you turn around and there's Glenn Taylor pulling the typical bullshit. Like, I'd be pretty pissed. So for the Lakers, it's a reminder you don't really ever have to worry about the Wolves winning a championship. Anthony Edwards probably going to peace out pretty soon, so long as Glenn Taylor is the owner there, because he wants to win championships. They might actually lose Tim Connolly as a result of this, because he looks at Glenn Taylor and says, oh, that guy clearly doesn't care. I got to go to an organization that does. So for the Lakers this season, one of the best teams in the conference just got worse. And long-term, one of the kind of more potentially exciting organizations moving forward is once again the same old Minnesota Timberwolves. And that seems like a bit of a bummer for all involved who care about the Minnesota Timberwolves. All right, I'm going to go ahead and dive on into the iTunes reviews, and we have a bunch, it looks like. September 2nd. No, that was a long time ago. Man. All right. So Thursday, we had this come from Viva Exceptionalism. Come on, Anthony. Basketball teams have rosters, and those rosters need to be managed by men. Who's going to do that? You, Raj Chapalu. I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You weep for my giving player options, and you curse the front office. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of knowing what I know, or not knowing what I know, that giving those player options probably save money and maybe my job and my existence, while the grotesque, incomprehensible to you saves money and my job. You want to know the truth about roster management, because deep down in places you don't talk about on podcasts, you want Maxwell Lewis on the court. You need Maxwell Lewis on the court. You want Bronny James on the court. You need Bronny James on the court. You want, oh, well, you get it. Oi, lecture. That was all written from the perspective of Rob Pelinka. Fantastic satire there. Yeah, I have nothing to add. That was really, really good. That was really funny. All right, the 2030 pick. So comes from a regular poster whose name doesn't show up for some reason. So what's the deal with this pick? It can be used, but it just not paired with the 2029 or 2031 pick. Although this would never happen, but in the same season, a year, could Rob do a deal with 29 and 31 paired together, and then in a separate deal with 2030? Can he do 3 separate deals in the same season year? Or if he uses 29 or 31 at all in any fashion, 30 can't be used at all? How's that work? So first and foremost, the thing that needs to be mentioned here is the Stepien rule, which doesn't allow, God, Bills receivers, can you catch the ball? No, I don't have Josh Allen on my fantasy team. Why do you ask? So the Stepien rule was put in place because Ted Stepien, back when he owned the Cleveland Cavaliers, kept on trading or selling away first-round picks in order to keep costs down on his team. And eventually enough owners got so sick of so many one-sided trades, I believe specifically because Ted Stepien traded the pick that would become James Worthy to the Lakers. They were able to draft James Worthy right after winning a championship because of Ted Stepien. And the NBA put in place the Stepien rule. You know how bad of an owner you have to be to have a rule like that named after you? But he does. And so when you ask about 2030 and why it's brought up in regards to the 29 and 31 picks, it's because if you trade 29, you can't then trade 2030. And then the next time you're able to trade or the next pick that you'd be able to trade would be 2031. Or if you trade 2030, you can't trade 2029 or 2031 because those obviously border on each side 2030. So that's why the 2030 pick is so tricky, and that's why there's so much, focus on the 29 and 31 picks. all that said, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to kind of digress and say how annoying it is. I get why there's so much focus placed on the first round picks, but the Lakers have a bevy of second round picks that could very easily bring in real NBA talent. Remember, Rui Hachimura was acquired through second round pick capital. And all of this focus on the first round picks, it makes sense because those are typically what are needed to bring in, the type of high end talent that the Lakers clearly need. But also, like, you can the Lakers are obviously very thin at center, right? Okay. Send out a few second round picks to bring in an above league average center. That kind of makes some sense, right? But what are we doing here, right? And with the second rounders, all right, the Lakers have roster spots that they need to open up. Okay, send out a highly conditional second rounder to open up that roster spot. That probably won't convey. That used to happen all the time in the league. Like this idea that the only way that the Lakers can make the kind of addition to the roster that they very clearly need is through first round draft capital. uh, that's just not the case, and I do think that second rounders have become more valuable in this new CBA because you have more flexibility with how much you pay a second round pick versus a first, and that has risen, helped the prices on those second round picks go up. But all that should mean though is that like that means you can get more per second round pick that you send out. So all of the focus on the first round picks, I get it. I'm not saying it's not well placed, but we can't also ignore the stuff that the Lakers are choosing not to pursue by way of all of the second rounders that they have. I believe they have in their stash right now upwards of 7 second round picks that they could potentially send out. And they just haven't. We have a super comment, which means I get to play this bad boy. I get boards for days, writes, have you heard anything about Mitchell Robinson in LA? If not, what are some other big man names the LA has interest in? Mitchell Robinson is the exact type of player under normal circumstances that that the Lakers would have interest in. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And the Lakers are extremely reticent and extremely cautious when it comes to acquiring players who have injury concerns. It's why they didn't take the guy who went to Houston last year, their rookie who was exciting. Houston Rockets rookies in 2023. Cam Whitmore. Cam Whitmore was somebody who people in the organization liked, I'm told. And there were plenty of people, smart people in the organization, like people from the scouting department, singing his praises. But the Lakers, especially high up in the organization, were not interested in Whitmore because of the injury concerns. So with Mitchell Robinson, they could probably get Robinson for very, very cheap right now, but they probably won't do that. For one thing, I kind of makes sense. He may not be available for like months potentially. And then even when he is available, like he looked great in the playoffs, and then he walked to the sideline, and then he was immediately questionable. And he went from being questionable in that moment to now not being able to really work out all of the offseason. And then on top of that is now not going to be available for the beginning of this upcoming season. And the Lakers, as tantalizing as Robinson is as a prospect, or in terms of just raw talent, that's the kind of thing that the Lakers would be interested in. But they are not going to, I don't think, pursue him because of the concerns about his ability to stay on a court, which is a very important part of being an NBA player. All right, we do have some questions from the I asked for questions earlier today, and here we go. So at Bashir_1 writes, your personal prediction on player or said players you think the Lakers will trade for eventually this season. My prediction. I'll give one prediction, and I've been pretty consistent on this one. And I think it'll wind up being Kuz. I think Kuzma winds up being a Laker again. Washington is more open to negotiations than some of the other teams that the Lakers have spoken to. Kuz obviously has been a Laker before and would like to return to LA now that he's gotten a feel for being kind of, top dog in an organization or closer to top dog in an organization. I think, when it all depends on what another team is willing to pay and if the Lakers are unwilling to match that kind of an offer. But I think of the players that have been connected to the Lakers to this point, I think Kuz is probably the one that makes the most sense. His contract is also super valuable in that it actually goes down over the course of its length. And, that offers financial flexibility to the Lakers as well, something that we know that they care about a ton. So, yeah, I think Kuz will be my answer for that one. At Basho writes, why do you think that the NBA's popularity has seen a decline while salaries have seen an increase? What can the NBA do to get more people interested throughout the season, not just after Christmas? That's a tough question. For one thing, the measurements on popularity are very complicated, extremely complicated. We know that ratings are a very imprecise subject. We know that you know online impressions is also something that can be fudged as well. It's just it's a all of it is very hard to determine. Um, what is helping salaries go up is that these cable contracts that cable or um, I guess content providers are beholden to. They there are very few things that are guaranteed to get eyes on the television at any given time, and sports is, I think, the biggest one, the most secure one. And for these cable companies that are looking to subsidize the rest of their business interests, they do wind up having to pay up a ton because for sports, because that's the only, or that's one of the few ways, maybe the only way, that they can guarantee to advertisers that we will have X number of eyeballs on the screen at this time. And for the NBA, now this is where it gets kind of interesting. For a little while, cable companies thought that volume was more important than like quality of event. We have come to find out that that isn't the case, and that quality of event, meaning number of eyeballs on a singular event, is actually far more valuable than getting a few 100,000 people tuning into a Wednesday night game between the Lakers and Charlotte Hornets. Um, so NBA salaries can keep going up and those projections can keep going up because the league knows that these cable companies are going to keep paying up. And we just saw it again this year where ratings were declining, and even given that decline, ESPN and Amazon and Turner and all of these companies got into a bidding war. NBC got into a bidding war for the rights to be able to broadcast these NBA games, and we saw how it played out. So, um, yeah, I wouldn't go so far as to say that like I wouldn't use rising salaries as a metric for how popular the NBA is, nor do I think it's as simple as looking at declining ratings for the league being in peril in any way. The truth is somewhere in the middle of those two kind of spectrum points. All right. I think that is going to do it here for no. All right. So Malcolm asking question, maybe a better question for basketball passport, but will the Lakers ever dip back into the EuroLeague pool, or will Marcelo Huertas be our last guy forever? Look, the Lakers need to invest more in scouting, and yeah, like so long as the Lakers skimp on scouting resources, they are going to struggle to find talent anywhere, whether that be in the States, abroad, anywhere. So I don't think Marcelino Huertas is going to be the last Euro talent. Although I don't even think he's Argentinian. So that's not Europe. But I guess Euro League, I get it. All right. So Euro League, meaning players playing in Euro League playing well. Um, I think in general, the NBA has moved a little bit away from that. They've drafted those players and then let them play abroad and then come back once they are ready for the NBA. Or not come back, but like make their debut once they're ready for the NBA. And the Lakers, I just don't think spend enough on scouting abroad, domestically, anywhere, to compete at the level that they need to. And that's why you've seen a couple misses recently on draft picks. But hopefully things turn around. All right, yeah, that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lowdown Podcast. A little bit shorter show here because I'm starting to feel my throat get a little scratchy, and I need to save it for what is going to be a very long season. A reminder, please do subscribe to this channel, youtube.com/@Lakers Lounge and youtube.com/@Basketball Passport. Um, Lee and I will be getting together regularly there to talk about basketball as well. So please do that. Hit that like button, hit that share button, tell your friends, all of that good stuff. Leave those 5-star reviews. And until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow.